Your vote, your say. This is the 1057 ABC Radio Darwin Solomon Candidates Debate with Rick Hind on 1057 ABC Radio Darwin.
Good morning and welcome to a candidates debate for Solomon. There have been several forums put on by many community groups around Darwin and Palmerston in recent weeks, and it's been great seeing candidates at these events debating the issues that affect our lives. It doesn't happen everywhere around Australia, and yes, it might be because Solomon is always seen as a winnable seat. Now, many things have changed in the last 3 years since we last voted. The ABC's Vote Compass, do it if you haven't already, found in 2022 that the highest proportion of voters, 49% of Australians, wanted more immigration. Now, the same survey for this election campaign has found the same percentage, 49% want less. But do national trends like that apply here? Charles Darwin University is certainly hoping they don't. The campus built under the Darwin City deal and partly funded by a $151 million NAIF loan is banking on plenty of international students in the Darwin CBD. And the global political landscape has been transformed in the last 100 days since the second inauguration of US President Donald Trump. He's already flipped the result of one election, Canada's, yesterday. What impact will he have in Australia on Saturday? What impact could the changing strategic environment have on the US Marines, the Japanese amphibious force, either in Darwin already or coming for the first time this dry? Now, the Territory is a unique place. I wonder how many other radio hosts had to push a mud crab out of the way in their fridge this morning as they were putting together breakfast. I didn't catch it. My father-in-law did. We have unique issues, and what works in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth and Adelaide might not be great for us in the top end. That's what we're about today. What could our candidates for Solomon do for the people of Darwin and Palmerston in Canberra? Here's what voters have been telling us this morning.
I think it's just going to be about how are you going to bring people back into Darwin and offset the amount of people that are despondent with the way lifestyle is. So trying to bring the demand for people wanting to come back to Darwin, the old Darwin. So how are you going to promote Darwin interstate to bring the people coming back?
And I want to make this clear. The Chief Minister, Leah Finocchiaro, has been on 1057 ABC Radio Darwin this morning. She was asked on an emergency sitting of Territory Parliament today about bail law changes, the courts, police resourcing, all of which are Northern Territory government responsibilities. If you want to talk about law and order for the next hour, you should run for Territory Parliament. But there is a broader question here, and it's being asked on the streets of Nightcliff this morning.
There's deaths going on, there's robberies, there's thefts, there's such disgusting behaviour on the streets. There are actions in place, there are things happening, but how to get on top of that and how to get everyone else involved so that we can get on top of that so then we can start to move forward.
What can the federal government do to make the top end an attractive place for new people to move to and make sure that older Territorians stay? What are you hoping to hear today? 1300 057 222 is the number to call. Let us know your thoughts on 0487 99 1057. Before we get underway, I want to thank each candidate for coming into 1057 ABC Radio Darwin's studios this morning. We were originally planning on hosting this event at Mindle Beach Markets last Thursday, and we've torn you away from your face-to-face campaigning this morning, as I saw yesterday when I voted at Eton, mostly so I could see the how to vote cards everyone was being handed. Everyone was out there looking for people to vote. So thank you to Labor's Luke Gosling, the CLP's Lisa Bayliss, Independent Phil Scott and the Australian Greens' Jonathan Parry. We'll give each candidate 90 seconds to make their initial pitch, and then we'll get to debating some of the issues that affect your lives. We've put 4 numbers in a straw hat, and we pulled them out in this order. Luke Gosling, who's at the bottom of the ballot, on the actual ballot, is going first. He's the Labor member for Solomon. Luke.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks to the others that are here at the debate this morning. I'm incredibly proud to have the honour of representing people in Darwin and Palmerston in the National Capital and in the Federal Parliament, and of the delivery frankly, and the interest and the passion and support from the federal Labor team, from the Prime Minister through our experienced front bench to all of the members of our team who genuinely love the Territory. It's no surprise to anyone to hear that the Prime Minister is a frequent visitor up here to the Territory. He's been, in fact, to the Territory in just his first term more than Abbott, Turnbull and Morrison combined, including on Christmas Day to help us to commemorate the anniversary of Cyclone Tracy. So I'm very proud not only that he's promoted me to be his special envoy for Defence Veterans and Northern Australia, but that the whole team supports us. And we've seen that most recently with a $60 million commitment for an aged care facility, which will help with our health system. But more broadly, what I'm really proud of is that we're putting billions of dollars into health, into bulk billing in particular, into our urgent care clinics, and our cost of living support from tax cuts to energy bill relief are really making a difference. And what we're doing in housing is too, but it's going to continue. It's not temporary. That's permanent tax cut supports into the future, more dollars in the pockets of Territorians, which is great for them with cost of living challenges that we know exist.
Luke Gosling, the Labor member for Solomon there. Up next is the CLP's Lisa Bayliss. Lisa.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners. Look, a little bit about me, Lisa Bayliss. Those that do know me, I'm a born and bred Territorian. I was originally Lisa Manzi, and just to clarify any confusion out there, I'm Daryl Manzi's daughter, not John Bayliss's daughter, as I frequently get asked on the street. Look, I've just done 30 years as a Northern Territory police officer in the Territory. I've lived here all my life. I know the Territory very well. I grew up in a time where, life was fantastic. We were a time of boom and growth, and everyone knew everyone. It was a really good way to grow up in the Territory. And I noticed in the last 20 years, we've had a massive issue with crime. We've seen, particularly under the Labor government and the Territory Labor government in the last 8 years, we've had our crime just get out of control. Domestic violence is the highest, not only in the country, but pretty much the Western world. People don't feel safe in their homes anymore. We've got an economy that's shrinking, and frankly, we haven't seen the support that we need to have in Canberra. And for me to make the decision to run, that means I've given up my career of policing of 30 years, and I'm just want to stand up for the Territory, want to actually represent the Territory in Canberra, but also support our new Leah Finocchiaro government in Canberra. They need that support. They need someone who's on the same sync as them and understands what the Territory needs, particularly around, we say crime is a NT government issue. It's actually also something hand in hand to work with the Territory government federally as well. So there's lots of reasons why I'm running, but I just wanted to make that point for why I'm doing it.
Up next is Independent Phil Scott.
Thank you. I'm a married father of 3 kids, and I've devoted my career to building stronger communities, having worked for the Australian Red Cross, Frack Free NT, and in local government, using data and building relationships with business, government and the not-for-profit sector to address social need. I've accepted encouragements and am supported by hundreds of volunteers from across our city, wanting a community independent to stand out of a deep sense of community frustration that we're being left behind here by the major parties in the Territory, but also because our community has identified that we actually have all the knowledge, all the wherewithal and all the skills to be able to advocate for and represent ourselves in Canberra. Like many in our community, I've seen how the major parties have lost touch with what matters to ordinary Territorians. And we find ourselves in this position where we're exasperated and frustrated by decades of major party inaction on healthcare, grinding poverty, education that's not delivering outcomes that we expect. So I'm standing on a platform of real cost of living relief, a stronger economy that's actually innovative and not reliant on this boom-bust model that we're used to, real action on community safety that addresses accountability and prevention at the same time, protecting our climate, harbour and lifestyle, and also actually bringing some integrity to politics.
And Jonathan Parry from the Greens.
Thanks, Vic. As you said, my name's Jonathan and I'm running for the Greens in Solomon's election because I love my home here. It needs to be protected and the people of Darwin and Palmerston deserve genuine representation and strong leadership. The Territory is at the forefront of the climate, housing and cost of living crises, and we need bold systemic change to address these issues. The major parties lack the political will, they have no new ideas, and are content to tinker around the edges while our standard of living backslides. All signs are pointing to a minority government in Canberra, which means the Greens team can hold the balance of power, which gives us the power and the leverage to negotiate better deals for Darwin, Palmerston and the Territory. This last term, we used our power to secure an additional $3.5 billion for social and affordable housing, won workers the right to disconnect from work after hours, and blocked the major parties from using significant taxpayer funds to prop up the dying fossil fuel industry. Greens pressure works. The last time the Greens were in balance of power, we got dental into Medicare for kids, and this time we're going to get dental and mental into Medicare for everyone. We'll make sure everyone can see the GP for free, tackle the housing crisis, make childcare universal and free, make price gouging illegal, invest in an independent Australian foreign policy, and bring integrity back into politics. All our policies are fully costed. We can pay for a better future by making billionaires, big corporations, and tech giants pay their fair share of tax. We can't keep voting for the same old parties and expect a different result. If you want change, you have to vote for it. This election, only the Greens can be trusted to make Labor keep its promises and go further to make government work for you. This election, vote one Greens.
Thank you for your 90-second pictures there from each of the four candidates. That's Labor's Luke Gosling, the CLP's Lisa Bayliss, Phil Scott, the Independent, and Jonathan Parry from the Greens.
What does future Australia look like? What's our place in a big and rapidly changing world? And are our leaders up to the task?
Your Say, Future Australia, 2:30pm today on the ABC News Channel and 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin. Your vote, your say. You're listening to the Solomon Candidates Debate with Rick Hind on 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin.
It's 9:17 on 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin. The cost of living has been identified by our listeners and by voters speaking to pollsters as the number one issue in their lives as they go to vote. The top end's cost of living, the cost of flights, the tight rental market. We've spoken about all of these during the campaign. We've heard about this morning's annual rental affordability snapshot from Anglicare that of the 370 private rentals available on one day in this electorate, down more than from 500 at the same time last year, 3 were affordable for households on income support, 29 were affordable for households on the minimum wage. We've had a listener question on this. How will you address housing affordability when many sitting MPs benefit from the status quo? Core issues like negative gearing and capital gains tax concessions go untouched. Current Band-Aid solutions like first home buyer grants actually just push prices higher. That's from a listener. Half of all Territorians rent. Darwin has the second highest rents of any capital city. What are you going to do to make housing, to make rent more affordable in the top end? Luke Gosling.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. At the end of the day, affordability comes down to supply. The more supply that we've got, the more affordable it will be for people. But it's also how much money's in your pocket. So that's where our tax cuts, for example, an average Territory wage earner will be in this financial year, $1,700 tax back in their pocket extra under our changes, more in the year after, more in the year after. But that's permanent change. It's not like Peter Dutton and his one-off tax handout or, any other temporary measures that are just temporary. This is systemic change to make sure that lower and middle income people in particular have more money in their pocket. But wages have also gone up. So at the same time that we've put downward pressure on inflation from what we inherited from the Liberals, the coalition, Peter Dutton and his mates, we've put downward pressure on inflation but kept employment high, but wages are rising. Whereas under previous coalition governments, it was deliberate policy to keep downward pressure on wages. So people are going to earn more. So that's affordability.
Where are those people building the houses going to live?
So supply, as I said, supply is the major point. I'll just give you a quick example. We're giving the NT government, the Albanese government, $11 million to enable the headworks and so forth, to enable an extra 320 lots out in Palmerston and Farah, but we've already started building more homes out there in Johnson, in Zocoli, because we've got an accelerator, because the Greens actually teamed up with the Coalition to stop our Housing Australia Future Fund bill, but that's our $10 billion fund to have a systemic injection of funding into housing, including 45,000 social and affordable houses that we've already started to build. 28,000 are underway. And as that comes through, it links up with our policies around Help to Buy and also the 5% home guarantee, where first homeowners aren't going to have
So that's for home
insurance.
buyers. What about renters? Half of all Territorians rent. What are you going to do to reduce rent?
As well as all of the cost of living, the tax cuts and that, to just make it easier to be able to afford your rent. Supply is obviously part of the equation here. So more housing is good, and we're actively helping the NT government with that, as I mentioned. But there's also build to rent, which incentivises people to build more houses to rent out, more supply, downward pressure on rentals. But we're also committed to working with the states and territories so that they get some fairness back into their responsibilities around rental arrangements, so that landlords aren't ripping off people when it comes to rent.
Lisa Bayliss, excise is usually set aside to pay for road maintenance. Don't we need the money that your poster policy of reducing petrol excise will take away? We have the highest road death rate in the country, and road quality is a key factor in road deaths. Don't we need that excise to pay for safer roads?
Yeah, look, in relation to, where money goes, the tax cut that Luke Gosling's talking about with federally, with the Labor Party, doesn't start until next year on the 1st of July, and that's costed at $17 billion. Stopping the fuel tax, I was halving it for 12 months, it's going to cost about $6 billion. So that means that people will have more money to spend on lots of things. It is a temporary measure, but if it's needed to go for another 12 months, it'll go for another 12 months. And I think the important thing is for Territorians to understand that is, every time you fill up your car, you'll save between $14 to potentially $20. Bigger cars take bigger, fuel tanks. They take more petrol. We also have our lifestyle of camping and fishing. So that saving is going to be, really good for Territorians, particularly, as we enter the dry season.
The other promise that you've made during this campaign is about cabotage. It's not a new idea. It was proposed to a coalition government's cabinet in 2015, rejected by that cabinet. It's long been opposed by Virgin and Qantas. There are no immediate takers. Why are you promising it now?
Look, there was a white paper done, and from the recommendations was that Darwin was the ideal location to run a trial. This is a trial that we want to do, and I think particularly for Territorians, for far too long we've paid way too much in airfares. And I think everyone would expect that we do everything we possibly can to make our airfares cheaper. And of course, Virgin and Qantas will resist this because that this is going to hurt them because they're not providing the service.
But why promise daytime flights when so much of what we take off and land is determined by the Darwin airport having no curfew when other airports do? Sydney and Melbourne do. So our flights land when they do because of that, don't they?
No, the service that's provided is from the other states at the moment, so it's in line with them. We're more than 4 hours away in flight from most of the capital cities, so that it sort of fits in with their schedules, and that's the issue. The Territory, we're closer to Asia, to have flights that come from Asia to Darwin, and then to move us on, we'll get cheaper flights and we'll actually have them more frequently. That's what we want to do, and I think it's important for Territorians that we do something different. We can't keep on doing the same thing and expect the same outcome in relation to our flights.
I'll just go back to Luke Gosling for a quick answer there. Why not introduce cabotage? It has been recommended by the white paper. Why not do it?
Yeah, and I've been clear for a long time, not just during an election campaign, for a long time that I've got the support of my colleagues to have a trial out of Darwin should there be an international airline that's interested. I'm not just saying it during an election campaign. I've been on the record.
But don't these airlines wait for airlines to move? To wait for the government to move. So the airlines are waiting for the government to do something, and they'll hold off until they do.
The Darwin International Airport are in constant communication with people who are interested in coming into Darwin. all the time, and they've had some results recently with AirAsia coming back, which is fantastic. But I'll tell you a quick example of what it means to be in government and what you can do, and my advocacy has meant that landing fees, which are the highest in the country here in Darwin, haven't been hiked up again massively because we got Defence, me working with Richard Marles, got Defence to pay a greater amount of the runway upgrades that your listeners would be aware of, and what that did was make sure that there was very little reason for the Darwin International Airport to hike up landing fees any further in order to pay for that. Now, that's an example, as well as haranguing Qantas and Virgin when I'm down in Canberra, and making sure that, you know, the ripping off of Territorians has got to stop. It is a bigger flight up here from down south. They do use more fuel. That's the argument they always use, and they say that the landing fees are too high. But I'm giving you an example of the advocacy which results in lower pressure for the airlines. As soon as there's an international airline that wants to do a trial out of Darwin, we're ready for those conversations.
Phil Scott, you've said you'll work with airlines and the tourism industry to increase flight options and competition, reducing costs. How?
Just in relation to this cabotage issue, there is already existing economic reasons why the airlines are not doing this. For example, passengers and carriers flying international from the southern states mostly don't want to stop in Darwin. It is already possible, but we're a small place and the demand isn't competing with the international travellers. So we need to address the domestic cost issues. As far as I'm aware, the CLP hasn't spoken to any airlines, and the Shadow Minister, Bridget McKenzie, was asked about this and dodged the question. So it's a good idea. It sounds great, but as usual, it's coming up 2 or 3 weeks before an election, and my concern is that this is not good considered public policy. I commit to working with the airlines to work out the real cost factors, and to work with competition experts and the ACCC to fix any duopoly issues, but also the monopoly issues that are at play here with the airport corporations who operate in Australia. I've got a lot of questions about this, including what regulatory options might be available to give Territorians fair access to flight times and price comparisons to other destinations. So this is a priority issue, and the community will hold me accountable on that.
And Phil, how would you get housing built, more housing built in the top end? Where should it be built, if not at Lee Point?
So already, when it comes to the defence housing, there's already plenty of room in a more appropriate location for those defence personnel out near the barracks. That is closer to schools, closer to public amenities and services, and so we support that. The land's already available. We've also had decades here of the two major parties focusing solely on the demand side by offering incentives to home buyers. All that has done for decades is increase the cost of living to the point we've got it now. We need to explore this supply side issue, but we've done it before as a nation, and actually having some visionary leadership here is what's important. In the 1940s and 50s, post-war, our government actually invested in social and affordable housing back then, and it made a huge difference to returning soldiers and also the general public. We fully support government actually investing in the demand side, but also plan. So we support a 70-30 split of public and private housing, 70% private, 30% public, but that's salt and peppered across our community so that we don't have pockets of social housing isolated in particular areas and many of the social issues that come from that.
Jonathan Parry from the Australian Greens, what would you do to make rent more affordable? Can you do anything if Labor or the Coalition wins a clear majority in the House of Representatives?
Thanks, Rick. Just to start, I want to correct something that Luke said about us teaming up to block the housing bill. The Greens secured $3.5 billion negotiating with Labor when initially Labor wasn't going to put any money towards building new houses. It was further, many years down the line. The Greens secured that because we were in the balance, because we were negotiating with Labor and pushing them to act. In terms of the housing crisis and renters, the major parties have both said they want house prices to go up. So just sit with that for a second. They don't intend the cost of housing to go down because they're too busy looking after wealthy housing investors and property developers to look after Australian families. They want to give away $180 million over the next 10 years to wealthy property investors when that money could be better spent on building public and social housing. We've got a comprehensive policy to look after renters, first home buyers and people in public housing. For renters, we want to cap rental increases at 2% every 2 years, so renters aren't squeezed out of their homes by greedy landlords. And we need to establish a National Renters Protection Authority. We know that rental rights in the Northern Territory are some of the worst in the country, and we want to establish this national authority so that renters don't have to choose between complaining about black mould in the ceiling and getting kicked out because the landlord will go somewhere else.
Adam's Steer for Breakfast. Back tomorrow from 6.
Has the dry arrived? Battle of the dry v the wet is well and truly on, but it looks like, well, we know that the dry will win in the end, won't it?
On 105.7
ABC Radio Darwin.
Your vote, your say. You're listening to the Solomon Candidates Debate with Rick Hind.
They say they stand for different views, but it feels like they stand for the exact same thing.
On 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin.
It's 9:30 on 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin. Let's talk a bit about the harbour, something that borders both Darwin and Palmerston. Luke Gosling, how has buying back the lease of the Darwin port become a liability for you? Why wasn't it announced in Darwin at East Arm early in the election rather than a rushed phone call to Liz Travascus on 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin the afternoon before opposition leader Peter Dutton's announcement?
Well, as you should know, Rick, and certainly your colleagues know, I've been consistently against the idiotic decision by the Country Liberal Party teaming up with the Federal Coalition 10 years ago to flog off our port. I've been consistently against it, but consistently...
You have, but the Prime Minister didn't announce it. He announced it on a phone call to our Drive program. Why did that happen?
Well, I've been working with the Prime Minister for some time and also talking to people who are interested, Australian entities that are interested in taking it back for a long period of time. Let's not forget that it's Anthony Albanese who, when we were last in government federally, invested in the port. Part of the reason that we need to take it back was, one, our strategic port in Northern Australia should be in Australian hands, and two, there hasn't been the investment there that we need, which is why we've taken this step, which is most people understand. And I've talked to people down at the port. They're excited about the investment that will come. I can assure them that their jobs will be there, but there'll be more jobs down at the port because we're going to invest in the port.
How are you going to do that? So it's been described as strategically important. The Defence Minister, Richard Marles, defence experts always talk about its importance. When's the walk going to match the talk?
Yeah, well, obviously, once we've given the mandate at this federal election, we'll crack on. But the conversations have been happening for a long period of time. Because when you talk to miners and they can't get their product out of Darwin and they start looking to Adelaide because of our lack of infrastructure, there's a number of things, including rail loops. There's a number of things, but we need to look at the port. There's a lot of organisations, businesses that want to invest in East Arm, but they don't want to do it with the current owners. That situation's going to change in a commercial deal. We haven't been stupid enough to put any timelines on that because obviously when you're negotiating a commercial deal, you want the best possible terms for that negotiation. But we're serious about it. If anyone knows one thing about Anthony Albanese is whether it's Tiger Brennan, the overpass, hospitals, whatever it is, as infrastructure goes, that is very top of mind for him. And together we'll build the territory, including by securing the port in Australian hands and making that long overdue investment in the port as well.
Lisa Bayliss, the CLP candidate for Solomon. Former CLP ministers who made the decision to lease the port in 2015, people like John Elfrink are defending it to this day. Why was that decision a mistake? And what would you do as member for Solomon to make the Darwin port a going concern?
Yeah, look, firstly, I'd just like to say that, Luke's been in the position for 9 years. He only visited the port recently for the very first time after it was pointed out in the media that he hadn't actually been there. And it is true. I think it's embarrassing that the current Prime Minister rang a radio station to say that this was his plan only because he got wind of it, that Dutton was coming to town, that Peter Dutton was coming to Down to make an announcement about it. And I think that's, in terms of the leadership of our country, we've made a decision that we were going to do something about it, because this is a critical infrastructure for not just Northern Australia, but Australia as a whole. This is a strategic port.
It is. What will it look like under a government that you represent? What do you mean by that? What development will occur? We understand how much money is going to be spent, possibly, on delivering the port back to Australian hands. What will the port look like if you're in Canberra?
Well, the port, it's currently, as we know, it's on a 99-year lease, and that will come back to Australian hands. So it'll be we would hope commercially we want it to be sold to someone who's an Australian company. If that's not possible, then the Australian government will acquire it. That's the plan. We will return it to Australian hands. That, I think, is the first and foremost thing. It's and again, I say, Luke had 9 years to do something about this, and it's only at the last minute when he knew that we were going to do something about it that he stepped up.
Phil Scott, should the Port of Darwin be in Australian hands or not? I've asked you this before. What's your answer?
You have. Look, I certainly think it was a mistake to sell it in the first place, but is it for sale? Is my question. As far as I know, the owners aren't looking to sell it. So coming out and saying that we're going to buy the thing back, when you're trying to negotiate a commercial deal, all that does is just jack the price up. And estimates are that it's going to cost us $1.3 billion to buy this thing back. The reason that it was sold in the first place was because governments were failing to invest in it. And now, weeks before an election, these parties are making up more policy on the fly that just smacks of ill-considered thought and desperation. So there's a problem when we look to extricate ourselves from contracts that have been signed in good faith. There's a cost that comes with that. This is a 99-year lease. It makes us look foolish at an international level that we are flip-flopping on these sorts of big decisions. And frankly, I don't trust either of these major parties to have put the sort of thought into this that is needed if we are going to buy this thing back. These sorts of negotiations ought to be taking place with the current owner on the quiet, rather than making public statements and just jacking the price of this thing up in the first place.
Jonathan Parry from the Australian Greens. What should happen to the Port of Darwin? What should we be exporting from that port?
The fact that the major parties' announcements on the future of the Port of Darwin, it misses the mark about what's needed to address the issues facing the territory. It's a piece of critical infrastructure, and it should be in the hands of the public. And if we're going to buy back the Port of Darwin, let's use it as an opportunity to recharge the territory and create an alternative economic vision to tackle the cost of living crisis and create energy security and thousands of sustainable future-ready jobs.
So what are those jobs in what industries?
Those jobs, well, the major parties have committed $1.5 billion towards the Middle Arm petrochemical hub to help multinational gas companies make record profits. The Greens will withdraw that support for Middle Arm, and in addition to buying back the Port of Darwin, we can put that money towards massive public investment in clean energy infrastructure. So investing in energy and skills to fix the NT's unstable electricity system, providing energy security for households, delivering energy upgrades for every low-income and public housing dwelling in the Northern Territory, which will give families economic relief and the cost of living crisis. There isn't a need to destroy the beautiful natural environment of Middle Arm and jeopardise Palmerston and Darwin's air quality by creating a dirty petrochemical hub. The infrastructure we need in terms of having a port is already there, so why aren't we using it?
Well, that actually gets to my next question, is what should happen to Middle Arm? I think Jonathan Parry's explained what the Greens would do. Luke Gosling, what should happen to Middle Arm?
I've just got to provide your listeners with a bit of context when it comes to previous answers about the port. I've been connecting people Australian entities that want to build it with the Landbridge board quietly behind the scenes for a long period of time. That is because these negotiations should be conducted in confidence. But we will make sure that taxpayers aren't on the hook for the whole thing. We will get a good commercial deal and we'll help with funding for infrastructure where that's needed. But we won't have, as Peter Dutton would, taxpayers on the hook for the whole of the buyout, right?
That's
we want
the
a commercial
port. What's
deal.
going to happen to Middle Arm?
Yeah, I'll get to Middle Arm. But I'm just saying that whether it be $600 billion for a nuclear fantasy or buying out the port in 6 months if there's a commercial deal's not reached in 6 months is ridiculous. When it comes to the sustainable development area, of course, the Greens and the Environment Centre bang on about the petrochemical side of what they believe is going to happen out there. But let's look at what we know. Let's look at the proponents that have been identified, and that doesn't include petrochemical plants. That does include hydrogen, green hydrogen, critical minerals, and making batteries, which are all required for a net zero future. What the Environment Centre never wants to talk about and just, in fact, keeps misleading people on is the fact that Sun Cable, green energy from Territory Sunshine, will power green industry out at that Middle Arm Sustainable Development Precinct. A third of it will go to Singapore, but 2/3 is for industry that's fired by green energy. So if the Greens were serious, if anyone was serious about growing the territory and growing our economy and well-paid jobs and a net zero future where under Labor we'll have 83% renewable energy by 2030, we're committed to net zero.
So it'll be a solar farm, and then the solar power will go to Singapore. We'll get some of it. That's what's happening at.
Not some of it. 2/3 will come to Darwin and fire industry. So that's green industries. Territory Sunshine turn into green industries. But the 1/3, the remainder, that Sun Cable want to send to Singapore, and that is an export, and that's great. And in the future, why not? We've got heaps of space. There could be Indonesia and any other areas. And why that's important is because then they'll burn less coal. And at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want more renewables in the system.
Lisa Bayliss, what should happen to Middle Arm? What will happen to Middle Arm if the coalition wins the election?
Well, clearly, again, you're working with the territory government. This is not the federal government doing it on its own. But that's exactly what we need. We have an opportunity for a development, not just for our time now, but for generations to come. Hand in hand, Luke just touched upon about gas. And this is the most important thing, I think, for the territory going forward. We have got the development of Beetaloo Basin, and again, it's the opportunity of ensuring that we not only have that for the rest of Australia, but we have that for the Northern Territory, and we have that earmarked for Middle Arm. There is Sun Cable, exactly right with developing that and having that sun energy, the solar energy to be able to send to Singapore, also to have it for Australia as well. But without having Middle Arm go ahead, we're going to miss out on opportunity for, we're talking thousands of jobs and all the industries that are attached to it. This is vital for the development of the territory. This is vital for the development for our population going forward, for the government to have a long-term project. Phil Scott touched on having a vision for Australia. We actually need this for the territory. Hospitals are expensive to fund. Education's expensive to fund. These larger projects will provide the money that's required by the territory government to fund all those things. This is vital for our children to stay here and have jobs, and for our grandchildren. I can see that without this going forward, we'll miss out the opportunity because the gas will go elsewhere. The gas will go to other locations, and that'll still happen. Critical minerals will be developed in other places. And I think particularly for Northern Territory, we need this for our future.
Phil Scott, what should happen at Middle Arm?
It's already been identified by the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis that this thing is fundamentally flawed and the business model is not viable. So we shouldn't be having this conversation, and we've already had these promises. This is another boom and bust project. Old Darwin remembers what happened with the last one at Impex, where we were promised that this was going to change up the Northern Territory's economy. 10 years later, we're $11 billion in the hole as a local territory government. The proponent at Impex as making $21 billion and not paying a single cent in tax on it. Now we want to build another petrochemical hub across from Palmerston. It's going to destroy our fishing spots. It's going to pollute our environment, and it's going to also harm human health.
So the answer is nothing. There should nothing be built.
We've got $1.9 billion that the federal government is wanting to invest in a project up here to kickstart our economy. That's the real question. We're saying that, and we've spoken to a lot of small businesses who are saying, well, where do we get a cut in all of these subsidies and all of this federal government money? Why is it going to the big end of town? We say, how about we consult with our local small business community and look at how that $1.9 billion can be leveraged for research, development, innovation, small business growth, and leverage our assets here, such as the university. We can set up all sorts of manufacturing and startups in the territory on the gateway to Asia, have a little bit more vision rather than these 19th century petrochemical fantasies that are only going to harm our health. Now, also, what we are not hearing from these parties is that this is going to result in stillbirths. It's going to result in birth defects. The pollution out of this, it's going to result in respiratory illness, and that is all from studies into these industries. From 2,000 peer-reviewed studies done by the University of Sydney. This needs to be made available to the public, this sort of information, and it is not, and it is outrageous that the major parties are talking about a petrochemical hub and they are refusing to divulge to the community what the health impacts of these sorts of projects are going to be.
The Solomon Candidates Debate with Rick Hind on 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin.
Just before we move on, Jonathan Parry, you did mention middle arm, so I'll give you a short time.
I've got more to say, Rick. Yeah, both the major parties have shown time and again they don't care about our environment.
If you're going to read from a statement, I'll have to move on.
No, look, I just want to say that the Sustainable Energy Precinct, the only viable, the only business case is fracking the outback. The Environment Minister failed to pull the trigger when it comes to polluting fracking projects in the Northern Territory. And on that question, Lisa, of hospitals and education being expensive, let's tax billionaires, tech giants and billionaires and big corporations. It can all be paid for.
Find out who's set to shape the future of Australia.
We'll bring you the best analysis from our unrivalled team of experts.
Australia Votes, Election Night, Saturday night on ABC TV and iView, the ABC Listen app and ABC Local Radio.
It's 9:45 on 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin. We do things differently here. Do we need to be treated differently by the federal government? Regular listener and CLP Chief Minister Lisa Bayliss was ready to go when she was asked a question about zone tax concessions for people living in the NT.
It's well and truly overdue. To develop the North, we need a few key things. One is a different taxation regime, a different regulatory regime, and a different migration regime. Now, all of those are the remit of the federal government, and if they want to get serious in developing the North, then they've got to stump up on those three changes. We need more people, so we need different rules. We need better incentives to live this remote, and we need more opportunities to grow our economy because we have everything this country needs, and no, we are being overlooked.
Labor's Kevin Rudd proposed a special taxation zone for Northern Australia during the 2013 campaign. He was howled down by Southerners when more than a few people in the top end were thinking, hey, that sounds all right. How do we get more people to move to Solomon and stay? Lisa Bayliss, you promised to work closely with the CLP government in the NT. Leah Finocchiaro says the federal government needs to change the tax regime to make the NT more attractive, a different regulatory regime to grow the economy and change the immigration system to ensure more people can move to the territory from overseas. Instead of working with the NT government, why not make each of those three things an election promise?
Well, look, I think that's definitely something that we would love to see for the territory, but that's a.
Can't you promise it?
Oh, well, no, I can't. I can't promise something that.
But if you're working with the NT government, this is their wish list. Isn't that exactly what you would do if you got to Canberra?
But I would definitely be working towards it. I think that's something we'd all love to see, and particularly around migration. We are different to the rest of Australia. You've got places like Sydney and Melbourne that are overflowing with people. Housing prices are skyrocketed. We'd love to see more people come here. But before anyone tries to come to the territory, earlier you talked about the cost of living. When I've been out door knocking, the first thing people say to me is crime. Crime is the number one issue. We can't get people coming to Darwin, coming to Northern Australia when they're concerned about crime. So I think in order to make all those things possible. We need to be working to get that under control. We need to be able to reduce crime, and there is stuff that we can do with the federal government to assist them. And Leah Finocchiaro, the team have asked for a 7-point plan to be able to work with the territory government around Centrelink reform, around royalty payments to be moved to communities. These things that are necessary to try and change the status quo of what's currently going on.
Until I understand Monday night, you didn't talk in your TV ads. Why not?
My TV ads? No, I do have TV ads that I do talk in, so I don't know which ones you've seen. But
the ones that have been on YouTube for weeks have Leah Finocchiaro talking and you waving a flyaway. Why didn't you talk in your first TV ad?
Well, I do have TV ads where I do talk, so I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. I have a number of ads on television and I do talk in some of them.
One other question that has come up in the campaign, temporary election signs usually used for road safety messages have appeared on Bagot Road, on McMillan's Road, on Tiger Brennan Drive. The NT's election signage policy explicitly rules out using them in political campaigns. They read, "Put Labor last, make the NT happy," which aligns directly with the CLP's messaging. They have no authorisation message. Does the CLP have any connection to those signs?
I don't know. I don't know who's put those signs out. That's not something I've put out. So you'd have to talk to the person who's done that. It's not me.
Would you want them to be taken down if they're breaching the electoral signage policy?
That's probably a question for the Australian Electoral Commission. It's not something for me to answer. I don't know if one of the other parties is involved either. I don't know. That's a question you'd need to ask.
And can I ask finally, you are, as the CLP candidate, preferencing Pauline Hanson's One Nation above Labor. It didn't go well in the 2001 NT election where your dad retired as the member for Sanderson. Is One Nation better for the country than Labor?
Gee whiz, that's going back a long way. I think my dad retired. It's got to be at least 25 years.
The CLP lost the 2001 NT election campaign partly because they preference One Nation. You're doing that in this election.
Well, my dad retired. That was like 25 years ago. Yes, we are preferencing, we've made the decision to preference One Nation over many of the other smaller parties. Particularly, I think it's very important that for us to put Greens and Phil Scott, who I see as the same as Greens, they're one and the same. I actually see that a lot of their policies very similar. That's who we're putting last. And we've made the decision to put One Nation as a preference. So a lot of their policies, we align with some of those policies, but clearly they're their own party, and that's the decision that we've made federally. It's not a personal decision I've made. That's a federal decision that's been made by the Liberal Party.
Phil Scott, I've got a question for you. You've accepted donations from Climate 200. About a dozen independents who've done so have disclosed the amount. Some of them are very large, $500,000. Here's what Professor Ju Chong Tam from the Centre for Public Integrity has to say to ABC News about this last night.
The question about transparency of funding should be asked of every single party or candidate in terms of informed voting, addressing corruption. But for those who commit and seek to be elected on the platform of integrity, I think they're rightfully held to higher standards.
So why not disclose how much you've received?
We are disclosing all of our donations according to the requirements by Australian law. So we have nothing to hide. In terms of who Climate 200 are, they are a not-for-profit organisation who crowdfund from regular Australians across the country, many of whom donate small amounts on the understanding that it will go towards supporting community independent candidates like me. So what we have in this country is around each of the major parties has around 80 different fundraising entities that are set up and that make about $500 million through means very much unknown to the Australian public. And we are calling that out, and we are calling for better regulation around corporate donations especially, and donations to community campaigns.
Jonathan Parry, when we spoke, when you entered the race earlier this month, I asked why it took so long for the Australian Greens to announce their candidates for territory seats, especially after getting an NT MLA elected in August. Is it hard to run a campaign when you don't have financial backing? Where's your billionaire?
Where's our billionaire? Indeed, because the Greens don't take big corporate donations. We run off the back of people and volunteers and small community donations. One thing I would challenge Phil on is my understanding of Climate 200 is that it's better framed as Climate 200 Proprietary Limited. maybe that's worthy of further investigation. But, we're running a campaign that relies on people. And for people, you can trust that the Greens aren't selling your vote, because we don't take big take big corporate donations. We're not selling your vote to the highest bidder, and we're not taking donations from big gambling companies, big fossil fuel companies, and those corporations that are trying to influence government. That we need more integrity in politics.
You've told the ABC on 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin, one of your biggest concerns as you vote in this election is Australia's place in an uncertain world. Today from 2:30 on 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin, we will live broadcast the final forum in a special series looking at the issues of importance to you. Hosted by Hamish McDonald, Your Say Future Australia will explore how Australia represents itself on the world stage, including how we should navigate our relationship with an unstable US, if we should become closer to China, if AUKUS is the right security spend, and how our defence budget should be spent. Exercise Talisman Sabre will be held across Australia and in the NT this dry season. Operation Pitch Black will be back next year. The Marines rotation is already here. Japan's Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade, a Marine unit of the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, is on its way for the first time this dry season. But we appear to be more committed to the US alliance than the US is. Is it time for a parliamentary inquiry into AUKUS and the US alliance? Luke Gosling, why not? Why not debate this topic?
Look, we're very clear about our position in relation to our alliance, which of course has pillars in the economy, massive investment between the US and Australia, which is really important for our economy. Our defence relationship, which goes back many decades and is pivotal to us maintaining our freedom, working with like-minded partners in the Indo-Pacific, and we're proud of that. We will continue to do that. We maintain our agency and our sovereignty within that. But the other relationship with the US is in terms of critical minerals and renewables. And we're doing a lot in that space because that is the future. That's going to drive the technology of the future. And obviously,
so should there be a parliamentary inquiry into ANZUS and AUKUS or not?
ANZUS is solid. Our relationship with the US is solid. And of course, after the weekend, the conversations will occur. But underlying that government to government is always that departmental level. We've got so many people in the States, and we really are advantaged by that. We're an island continent, so we need a capable submarine force.
So it sounds like the answer is no.
Well, we've got a plan. We had a defence strategic review that we're funding. The big thing for Northern Australia and the Territory in particular is 14 to 18 billion into investment in the Northern Territory. Some of that's US, most of it's Australian. We've got.
I'll have to get other candidates' opinions on this.
A plan is the point.
The CLP had 3 Liberal Prime Ministers in 9 years. They worked on 3 separate submarine deals with 3 different countries. Tony Abbott had Japan, Turnbull had France, Morrison has the USA. If your leaders can't agree on submarines, why not debate this relationship that we are pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into?
Yeah, look, and I think it's important to know this is bipartisan support for the AUKUS deal. It's critical for our national security that we have the capability to be able to defend ourselves. And in terms of a national security, I think there should be no disagreement around what's important for our future. We know that under Labor, that unfortunately the gross GDP spending on defence has remained the same for the last 3 years. There needs to be an increase, and the Dutton Coalition government has committed to increasing that spending. It's vital. We know that national security is a hot topic, and it is really concerning. We recently had the Chinese ships that circumnavigate Australia. And everyone is nervous as hell about what that could mean in the future. So we need to be focusing on increasing our defence spending. It's very, very important. And
we are running out of time. Jonathan Parry and Phil Scott, can I just get quick answers to you on whether you would support such an inquiry?
Yeah, no, we need to get out of AUKUS and stop pitching our wagon to Trump's America. Australia is ready for an independent foreign policy.
And Phil Scott?
Our community has serious, well-founded concerns about AUKUS. What people are saying to me is that nobody expects to get these submarines. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on it, and these things aren't going to happen because the Americans have already said they can't keep up with their own production line for their own submarines. It's outrageous that we're spending this money and that we've already spent all of this money on submarines that have never arrived in the first place. It's nuts.
And just finally, we vote every day on 105.7 ABC Radio Darwin, and we play for cattle stations. So I want your vote today on whether you want to hear The Wind Cries Mary by Jimi Hendrix or Summer Wind by Frank Sinatra. Luke Gosling.
Frank Sinatra.
Frank.
Summer Wind.
Frank, 2 votes for Frank?
Yeah, I'm voting for Frank too.
I'll go for Wind Cries Mary.
1 out of 3 has my selection. I chose Jimi Hendrix. Sajam will be very happy he's chosen Frank Sinatra. Thanks so much, our candidates for Solomon, coming in to talk to us today ahead of your vote on Saturday. Really appreciate your time today.